let's review factoring. Okay, let's look at this first problem. I'm going to just observe right away, there's all positive signs. When I have an x squared out in front, a reminder that all I'm looking for is two numbers that multiply to 42 and add to 13. That's it. That's all I need. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 42. Here's a 42 right here. 6 times 7 is 42. Is 6 plus 7 13? Yep, it is. So I'm going to write, my answer is going to look like this. Okay, there's going to be an x here and an x here. In this case, everything's positive, and my numbers are positive 6 and positive 7. And a reminder about why this works, right? Remember, if I was to multiply this, this would be x times x, that would be x squared. X times 7, that would be plus 7x. 6 times x, that would be plus 6x. And 6 times 7, that would be plus 42. And then I would combine these two like terms, and I would get 13x, right? So this would equal x squared plus 13x plus 42. Okay, but right now we're doing it in reverse, but it's important for us to remember why it works and why this would multiply to get to that. Okay, but right now we are factoring, we are unmultiplying. Okay, and all I needed was two numbers that multiplied to 42 and added to 13. Okay, right now go ahead and pause, and you're going to try these next two problems, and then only come back here once you've tried them. Okay, just get these checked. I'm going to move on to the next one. Here, I noticed the problem is in the same format, but I noticed that there's a negative sign here. I still need two numbers that multiply to this and add to this. So I'm going to set up the same. Remember, just like up here, this x squared comes from x times x. So that's still going to be true. And in fact, that's going to be true on this whole page. This time I need two numbers that multiply to a positive. They multiply to a positive, and they add to a negative. How can two numbers multiply to a positive and add to a negative? It must be a negative times a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive, and a negative plus a negative is a negative. Okay, this time I'm still looking, in terms of the numbers, I'm still looking for two numbers that multiply to 16 and add to 10, but this time they're both going to be negative. Let's see, two numbers that multiply to 16, 4 and 4 are 16, but those don't add to 10. How about 8 and 2? Oh yeah, those multiply to 16 and add to 10. So I use 8 and 2. Okay, go ahead and pause and try the next two problems in that row. Make sure you get these checked before you move on. Okay, here I notice this x squared out in front. So right away, I'm going to write my x and my x. And I notice the format is the same as here. So again, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to this and add to this. If I want two numbers that multiply to a negative, that means I need one positive and one negative. Okay, now when I go to add these two numbers, because they have different signs, they're going to end up subtracting. So what are two numbers that multiply to 45 and subtract to 4? Let's see. Multiply to 45. Here's a 45. 9 times 5 is 45. Is 9 minus 5 4? Yeah, it is. So my two numbers are going to be 9 and 5. And I have to decide which one I want to make positive and which one I want to make negative. I want my two numbers to add to a positive. So therefore, when I combine them, I want there to be more positives than negatives. So I'm going to make my larger number positive and my smaller number negative. Okay, once again, go ahead and pause and try the two problems in that row. This next problem is very similar to the row above. I'm still multiplying to a negative, but this time it also adds to a negative. So the difference is here, okay, again I have this x squared out in front, so I'm going to write the x and the x. I'm multiplying to a negative, so again that means one positive, one negative. Okay, this time I want to add to a negative. So once I figure out my two numbers, I'm going to make the larger number the negative number. Okay, but right now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 44 and that subtract to 7. Remember, the reason I'm looking for two numbers that subtract to 7 is that my two numbers have different signs. So when I add them, I'm going to end up subtracting them. Okay, so what are two numbers that multiply to 44 and subtract to 7? Those two numbers are 11 and 4. Okay, so my numbers are 11 and 4. This time, when I add them, I want there to be more negatives than positives, so they'll add to a negative. So I'm going to make my larger number negative and my smaller number positive. Okay, go ahead and try those next two problems and get checked before moving on. On this last row, I'm going to rewrite this as x squared plus 0x minus 25. And then it's the same as what I've been doing. I need two numbers that multiply to negative 25 and add to 0. How can two numbers add to 0? Numbers that add to 0 are like 3 and negative 3. That adds to 0. Or negative 2 and positive 2. That adds to 0. Okay, so what I need is one positive and one negative of the same number. And perfect, because I have a positive times a negative, that's going to get me a negative. So what number multiplies by itself to be 25? That number is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So this is my answer. Okay, go ahead, try those next two problems.